Vice President Kamala Harris has done hundreds of public events since being sworn in. In 2024, so far, she's visited 20 states with multiple trips to 14 states, visiting more than 60 communities in America. She has led at home as well as abroad, meeting with over 150 world leaders. She has had 15 different foreign trips. She's headlined the Munich Security Conference 2 years in a row to talk about the Ukraine-Russia conflict, war. She also led up the delegation for the UAE for COP20, which is around climate change, and United Kingdom for the first global AI summit. Her portfolio, we're going to talk about her portfolio specifically because we're not just talking about convening meetings, we're talking about things that she has led the charge on. Kenny already mentioned maternal mortality. I also want to add that they have created the National Maternal Mental Health Hotline. Obviously, a big part of maternal health is not just physically what you go through, but it's postpartum depression, perinatal depression, something that I actually experienced for a brief time when I was pregnant with my little boss baby. And so that's a free, confidential 24/7 support hotline that was part of her, maternal mortality, maternal health task force. She is also the chair of the White House Task Force on Worker Organizing and Empowerment, which mobilizes the federal government's policies, programs, and practices to empower workers to organize and successfully bargain with their employees. We know that the Republican Party is about busting up unions, particularly J.D. Vance. She oversees the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence and Prevention. Somebody mentioned that earlier in the comments. She's led the charge on the administration's response to reproductive rights, having events, over 50 events in over 16 states. She had a reproductive freedoms tour when people in 2022 said that this wasn't going to be an issue in the midterms. She led the charge. Democrats won on this particular issue, and it's an issue that she's even stronger to champion as opposed to President Biden. No shade, we love President Joe, but you Catholic, you don't even say the word abortion. A couple more things, Monique, if you'll allow me the time. She's led the administration's efforts alongside EPA Administrator Michael Regan to eradicate lead pipes over the next decade. I remember we've been talking about Flint needs clean water. This is something that she's led the charge on. She's also leading the administration's charge on reducing medical debt, which has led to, or will lead to, medical debt being removed from 15 million Americans. I saw some people saying, oh, well, who has medical debt? 15 million Americans do, okay? And it's on the credit report. So that allows people to have their debt income ratio more favorable so that they can get a mortgage financing, car financing, better interest rates on top of all that, because your debt income ratio determines your interest rates, not just whether or not you can get a loan. She's also led the charge on home ownership appraisal bias so that you don't have to go take your black ass photos down and put your white neighbor in your house and have them pose for you to get a decent appraisal value. One of the things that she did in the Senate was she secured $1.7 billion that were administered by the Treasury Department under this administration in grants for 600 community development financial institutions across the country. She was put in charge of the broadband access part of the infrastructure bill. 19 million Americans gained low-cost internet as a result of the Affordable Connectivity Program for discounted access. She led the charge in the administration on the COVID-19 racial equity initiatives within the administration. Juneteenth, which became law under this administration, was a bill that she first introduced in 2020 as U.S. Senator for the first time to make it a federal holiday. And the last thing I'll say to close it out is when she was a senator, she revived the push to make lynching a federal hate crime. That was something that had 200 failed attempts before Kamala Harris led the charge on getting it to pass the Senate for the very first time. Okay. Now, because of the differences in the House and the Senate and then having Trump as president, it did not become law. But under the Biden-Harris administration, the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill became a federal hate crime. And so we can see throughout this administration Vice President Kamala Harris's fingerprints, her leadership in every aspect of the policies. She has the receipts. She has the credentials. She doesn't need training wheels. She has the reputation and she has the relationships that we need to have a smooth transition and to continue the work that's been done so far. And the one last thing I would say is people say, well, what is she going to do for the blacks? Okay. Well, I've already outlined a lot of the receipts, but let's also be clear that under the Trump Supreme Court, there has been even more rolling back on our ability to have things targeted in neon black letters for black people. The Fairness Fund cannot even give out grants of tens of thousands of dollars to small businesses for black women. Affirmative action was overturned. And so we have to be smart in how we approach the racial disparities, how we get racial equity in this country. And Vice President Kamala Harris has shown that she knows how to do that with the way that she crafts policy. And so we have a lot to look forward to, a lot to celebrate. I've already broken down the DA, the AG, the Senate. I haven't talked about that as much, but I touched on a little bit. Kenny and all of us have brought the receipts. And so let's go out there and let's win this thing.